All right, this video is about you, so you do the intro, okay? That was very good, thank you. I'm sure we all remember our first long-distance overland trip. We didn't know what we were doing, we didn't know what we'd need, and if you're anything like me, you massively overpacked. No matter how long you've been overlanding, taking a baby with you completely changes everything, and it's like you're heading out for the first time again. Our baby is now 10 months old and has visited 17 states so far. We've videoed a couple of our trips, starting with our one through Colorado and Utah when he was 12 weeks old, and most recently through the Mojave Desert. In our videos, it might look like we really know what we're doing, but I'll let you guys into a secret. We don't. None of us do. Every parent is constantly learning and facing new challenges, even if they've had children before. Even though this was one of my most requested videos, it might not help you since every child is different, so your best bet is just to get out there and learn for yourself. There are some lessons that I've learned along the way, so I will share those anyway, and hopefully something helps you out. Just a quick disclaimer before we start, this advice is based only on my personal experiences camping and traveling with our baby, and I am definitely not an expert. Every child is different and may have different requirements. Definitely consult with your pediatrician before following any of this advice. Also, be aware that safety guidance may change and that toys and equipment suggested in this video might have been subjected to recalls or might have been found to be unsafe since I filmed this. You are ultimately responsible for your child's safety. I will also put affiliate links in the description to a few things that we have bought that have helped us, but as with pretty much any baby toy or any baby equipment, you can actually pick them up off Facebook Marketplace for a lot less than you can buy them for online, and that is where we got a lot of our stuff. When my wife and I were starting to get into overlanding many years ago, we started out relatively close to home in a campground that wasn't too far away from a Walmart. It paid off since we were able to run over to the store and pick up some cooking utensils that we'd forgotten. Our first trip with the baby was actually very similar. We went about 4 hours away from home to the Smoky Mountains, where we rented a cabin and spent the days hiking and exploring the national park. And sure, I know that's not overlanding, but it gave us a good idea of what we'd need, how we'd pack, and what it's like to spend the day on a road with the baby. And we definitely learned a lot. One of the things that made taking the plunge into our first long-distance trip was knowing that we had a backup plan. Our plan, the original plan, was to camp our way across Colorado and Utah, but if things were going poorly, we'd just get an Airbnb in southern Colorado and just head out on day trips. We ended up being fine with the camping and the traveling, but it was good peace of mind having that backup plan, and I'd recommend that you do the same thing. Everything is slower with a baby. Driving from Kentucky to Colorado used to take us a day and a half, but with the baby, it ended up taking us 3 full days. We used to drive as much as we could and only stop for gas, a bathroom break, or sandwich drive-through from a fast food restaurant. But with the baby, we have to stop and feed him and take time for him to stretch his legs and have a break, because babies just can't sit in a seat all day long like we can. And it's the same when you're out on the trails. We're constantly stopping to give him time out of the seat, and we're getting out to explore and see the sights. He loves watching things, touching things, listening to things that just aren't the inside of a truck. Something that does help while he's in the truck to help keep him entertained is that we have a travel arch car seat toy, and he loves to play with it. It basically straps on either side of the car seat, hangs across him, and has several things that dangle down for him to pull and play on and manipulate. Something to do while we're driving. To carry him around outside of the vehicle, we have a backpack carrier called the Osprey Poco LT. It's lightweight, it's relatively flat when folded down, and it has a built-in sunshade, and he just loves being carried around in it. Before having the baby, my wife and I had things pretty well figured out at camp. We both had our jobs, and we could get set up and packed away quickly and efficiently. On the first camping trip with the baby, all of that went out of the window. There are several things that we have learned that help us out with being a little more efficient. One of them is having something that he can do, the baby can do, or play with while we're packing away or while we're setting things up. When he was young, we had a bouncer that we strapped that same car seat toy onto, or we put him in a fold-up playmat that he absolutely loved. Now that he's a little bit older, we have a Pendleton picnic mat that we picked up from Costco, and we lay that out and sit him on it, and he can play with his toys on that. We've also switched bottles since our first trip. We used to have the Dr. Brown's bottles, but they had 5 really, really small pieces that all needed individually washing with a tiny little scrubbing brush, and it just took forever to get everything clean, and we wasted a ton of time at camp. We've since switched to these bottles that just have 2 little silicone inserts. So there's the main insert there, and then there's the little insert at the top there. And those are the only 2 pieces you need to wash. The rest of it, the skeleton like that, doesn't really need washing all that often. And then another nice thing about these is the silicone inserts can squash down really small, so they save a ton of space. So we end up just taking like 4 or 5 sets of these silicone inserts and a couple of the shells, or the skeletons as they're called, and just saves a ton of space in the vehicle. Of course, not every baby is bottle fed, but my point is, if you've got something like that that's really complicated, takes a lot of time to set up, a lot of time to wash, a lot of time to break down, consider getting something a little bit simpler. Boogie wipes are your friend, but they only go so far. We found a lot of success with sponge baths. You could either warm up some water and dip a soft sponge in it to wash the baby, or you could do what we do, which is use the geyser system. And the geyser system is a self-heating sponge bath. It has a pump built in, so you can turn that flow up and down and basically sponge him down each night. We've been very lucky with sleeping. Our guy actually slept his first full night ever while we're out on a camping trip with him. For a bed, we've been using a Docker Tot Grand, which is it's marketed as a lounger, and it's got high padded sides, so it keeps him contained really well. They are not sold for sleeping in the US market, but we found it's really good for protecting both us rolling onto him in the iCamper rooftop tent, and it stops him from rolling around while we're using it in the habitat. Temperature management has been a struggle for us while out camping, since guidance tells us not to use blankets due to that smothering risk. So we end up taking several different sleep sacks of different temperature ratings, and now that he's older, we also have a sleeping bag that has arms that he can stick his arms out of. He's always hated being swaddled or having his arm movement restricted, so he likes being able to wave his arms around while he's in that sleeping bag. Thankfully, the habitat that we got has a Truma heater with a thermostat, so that's been really, really useful for regulating the tent's temperature on the colder nights. Before we got the habitat, we had tried putting a heated blanket underneath him just as a gentle source of warmth, but be careful if you do that, since you don't want that heated blanket getting too hot and basically cooking them. Whatever you do, please do not use a buddy heater in the tent, especially not with children in there. I've seen 2 rooftop tents burn down from buddy heaters, and I'm talking about 2 people I know, not just pictures I've seen on the internet, and it's just not worth the risk. The best heater option is a propane heat exchanger like the Truma that I have in the Habitat, or the Propex HS2211, which I had before the Habitat. But you can also use diesel heaters. Just be aware that they're slightly less reliable, and you have to be prepared to have a backup option if it fails. Right now, the Truma, which is probably the best option, isn't available as a standalone heater, but we are working on getting it set up so you can actually buy it in a box, hopefully before next winter. So make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss that video once that's done. We've got those for sale on my website at revereoverland.com. And actually, you should subscribe to the channel anyway, because it is my goal to get to 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Not only will you be helping me out reach that goal, but you also get to see more videos of our family trips. My final tip for getting ready at night is that evening, prepare everything that you'll need first thing in the morning so that it's ready to go. You don't want to be getting out of the tent or digging around finding things while you've got a hungry baby or a stinky diaper waiting on you. Pack everything. We ended up overpacking, but it's okay. We're still narrowing down what we need and what can be left at home, and the more experience we have, the more stuff we realize we don't actually need. Something that did help us was paying attention to how many diapers, burp cloths, and how much water he went through each day in the weeks leading up to our trip, and then packing a little extra. It's also worth bringing some Tide Pods or something similar for washing at campgrounds, or consider camp soap if you're able to dry the clothes while you're camped, because especially when they're young, you go through an insane number of burp cloths and clothes, and it's nice to be able to keep them clean. If you're camping in the cold and your baby is bottle fed, consider bringing a bottle warmer. We had one at home that we actually didn't ever use at home, so we almost didn't take it with us, but after a particularly cold night out camping, all of our water ended up being too cold for him, and he was getting brain freeze, so we were glad that we had it. Anyone is capable of taking their baby with them on trips. It is definitely a lot more work, and everything that you're used to will have to be changed. Be prepared for shorter travel days and less distance traveled, but it is 100% worth it. The trip will be a lot more fun and a lot more meaningful when you're showing your little one the world. If you haven't already seen it, go watch our Mojave Desert video where we took our little guy out camping along the Mojave Road. He absolutely loved it. He had so much fun, and I think that you'll like it too. Thanks for watching. Will you look at the camera and do the intro? All right, will you look at the camera and do the intro? Boo.